So let's get into the very first big lie. The one that plays on repeat like it's a broken cassette in every political Facebook group, or TikTok stitch, or in a fake history documentary on YouTube and Netflix, and all of those. Here's the lies. Ready? Republicans freed the slaves. Democrats started the KKK. We are the party of Lincoln. The Civil Rights Act wouldn't have passed without Republicans. And then so who are the real racist? I mean, do you all have like new material or something? Like something else? It's the same thing every time. And let's be honest, this isn't education. This isn't some earnest attempt to learn from history. It's always the same thing, propaganda. Plain and simple. It's a bait and switch built in historical context collapse, where a few cherry-picked facts get twisted into a total false narrative. Let's start with some facts. Yes, Abraham Lincoln was a Republican. He ran on a platform that opposed the expansion of slavery into new territories. And yes, his Emancipation Proclamation in 1863 technically freed slaves in the Confederacy. But let's pause right here. Because the Republican Party, that was a radically different institution than what we see today. And Lincoln's motivations weren't just about some deep moral commitment to racial justice. Because he wasn't Frederick Douglass. In fact, in an 1862 letter to Horace Greeley, Lincoln explicitly said, and I quote, "If I could save the Union without freeing any slave, I would do it. I intend no modification of my oft expressed personal wish that all men everywhere could be free." So yes, slavery was immoral, but preserving the Union, that was priority number one. The Emancipation Proclamation was a wartime strategy designed to weaken the Confederacy and dissuade foreign powers like Britain and France from siding with them. It wasn't a sweeping moral revolution. It didn't even free all enslaved people, just the ones in Confederate territory. The North still had slavery in places like Kentucky and Delaware after the proclamation. Now, let's talk about the party. And if you think like, oh, you just hate Lincoln, like, listen, what else can I do? I love the movie Lincoln. I think what he did was amazing. It's just precedents are complicated. So don't go to my comments saying that you're just a hater. You don't know. If the war could have been prevented in that way, he would have done it. That's just it is. That's all it is. Was he internally believe that slavery was immoral? Yes. Just like everybody thinks about that. Well, not everybody, but the point is that being a president in this country is about making middle ground decisions, and people don't, and not, it doesn't please everybody. All right. Anyways, let's talk about the party platforms. The Republican Party in the 1860s was a new progressive party, a coalition of anti-slavery activists, Northern industrialists, and former Whigs. The Democratic Party, especially in the South, was the party of white supremacy, plantation slavery, and violent racial control. No one's denying that. But both parties evolved, both parties flipped. And today's Republican Party, it has nothing in common with the party of Lincoln. It's just beyond the name. That's not just speculation. That's political science. That's voting records. That's decades of demographic and ideological shifts. Now, think about this. Why is it always the ones who wave the Confederate flags, the ones who vote Republican? Just saying. Now, let's talk about the Southern strategy. In the 1960s, when the civil rights movement gained momentum and Democrats under Lyndon B. Johnson passed the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965, Southern white voters revolted. Barry Goldwater, Republican nominee in 1964, opposed the Civil Rights Act, and he won 5 Deep South states despite losing in a massive national landslide. Richard Nixon saw the writing on the wall, and he adopted the Southern strategy, a calculated plan to peel white voters away from the Democrats using coded racial language. And you see it all the time, guys. It's still, to this day, we still use it. We're talking about terms like law and order, states' rights, even sometimes the welfare queen stuff, but that was more like Reagan. I mean, come on. And we see it, all that stuff. To this day, it's still working apparently. And they weren't yelling slurs. They didn't have to. They knew the subtext. Even Lee Atwater, one of Nixon's top strategists, admitted in a 1981 interview. I already said the quote, guys, but sometimes you gotta repeat it. Because sometimes people forget. And here's the quote that he said. And I'm gonna censor myself. You start out in 1954 by saying N-word, N-word, N-word. By 1968, you can't say that. It backfires. So you say stuff like forced busing states' rights. He literally admitted it, that racism didn't go away. Like I said, it just got better PR. So no, the modern GOP doesn't get to wave around the Emancipation Proclamation like a press pass. Not when they spent the past half century courting the same white Southern rebutters who once cheered George Wallace yelling, "Segregation now, segregation forever." Now, let's zoom in on the KKK myth. Yes, the Ku Klux Klan was originally founded by Confederate veterans in the post-Civil War South, many of whom were Democrats. But the idea that today's Democratic Party is responsible for the KKK, that's like blaming modern Germany for the Nazi Party. Political parties evolve, countries change. That's literally the point of democracy. People learn, fight, grow, and shift. What the Democrats started the KKK talking point ignores is that the Klan had just as many sympathizers in the GOP by the 1920s, especially in Midwestern states like Indiana and Ohio. In fact, Warren G. Harding, a Republican president, had known Klan supporters in his cabinet. Same thing with Donald Trump. Shocking. Now, about the Civil Rights Act. Another favorite gotcha line. Republicans passed the Civil Rights Act. And that's partly true. In 1964, more congressional Republicans voted for the act than Democrats, numerically speaking. But let's unpack that. Southern Democrats, known as Dixiecrats, were the main opposition. Northern Democrats were overwhelmingly in favor. And the Republicans who supported civil rights, they were mostly liberal, moderate northeastern Republicans. Many of those liberal Republicans, people like Jacob Javits and Edward Brooke, will be expelled from today's GOP for being too woke. Meanwhile, the very next year, most of those Dixiecrats, like Strom Thurmond, left the Democratic Party and joined the GOP. That wasn't a coincidence. That was the realignment. And now let's fast forward to today. Because let's ask yourself, which party is pushing for voting ID laws that disproportionately impact black and Latino or brown voters? Which party is banning books about civil rights leaders and slavery from school libraries? Which party is crying about DEI and wokeness while gutting diversity programs? DEI is their new version of the N-word. Come on. Which party is defending the January 6th insurrectionists, many of whom waved Confederate flags through the Capitol? If you're still screaming Lincoln freed the slaves while cheering the modern GOP's war on black education, you're not pro-black history. You're hiding behind it. You're hiding in racism is what it is. So what does all this mean? It means history isn't a TikTok soundbite. It's not a party trick. It's not a shield you get to hide behind while doing the exact opposite of what you claim to represent. And here's the quote I want to end this segment on. Yes, Lincoln was a Republican, but that Republican Party doesn't exist anymore, just like the 1860 Democratic Party doesn't either. Again, the stuff in the 1860s right now don't apply to today's life. Both parties change, and the real question isn't who did what in 1865 and who's doing that what now. And if your answer is book bans, voter suppression, Confederate cosplay, and hate-baiting cable news, you've already told us everything we need to know. So don't come at us with revisionist history and cherry-pick slogans, because this time we're fact-checking in real time.